first, thank you, Will. It's an honor to really be up here and to help facilitate this panel discussion. I often look at it from a owner's perspective, the DOT's perspective, that in reality, we cannot build roads without our contracting community. And it's real easy for us to implement new policies, procedures, new ways of doing things. But if it's not useful to the contractors, if it's not information that they can use to build the road, then it's a wasted resource on our side, and it causes a lot of consternation and potential disputes. So from my perspective, everything we do at Caltrans, we do in collaboration with our contracting partners. And I often say that, yes, we're the owner and you're the contractor, but together we're the industry. And if we want the industry to succeed, we have to go down these paths together. So this was a really important session here to hear what is important to our contracting community as far as a BIM model. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ray Hopkins. I manage the division of construction at Caltrans. Been here 27 years and loosely involved. Really, the brains of the organization is sitting back there, and you all know Mark Counts. We'll call him the brains of the organization as we're implementing digital design, BIM modeling, as-built, asset management. But to make the whole tool useful, the one key factor that we really have to take in consideration is our external stakeholders and our contractors. So I'm going to start with the panel here and give them each just a minute or two to introduce themselves. Luis.
Hello, everyone. So once again, my name is Luis Campos. I'm a digital and innovation manager for Ferrovial Construction. I started at a BIM consultancy and then eventually changed to my current company. I've fulfilled jobs as a construction manager and a technical office manager. Now I'm only focused on implementing BIM digital solutions, innovative solutions. I've implemented lots of models in all the projects we have. I've also implemented some robots that we also use in construction, and that's it.
I'm Connor Christian. I'm a BIM operations manager at Kiewit Infrastructure. Little over 20 years experience. It's kind of a mixed bag of experience, but it's easiest to just say there's a fair amount of construction, practical field experience as a project engineer and superintendent. A lot of time doing BIM consulting and implementation for a wide variety of people and software development, and always excited to see where I can help things advance.
I'm Armando Garcia. I'm with Coffman Specialties. I've been in the construction business for 35 years, the first 21 of those with Caltrans. My role at Coffman is alternative delivery, and I manage all of the construction work that we do for the department for Caltrans.
I'm Scott Fernald with Granite Construction out of Salt Lake City, Utah. I've been with the company for about 24 years, all on the operations side. So started as a project engineer, project manager, and now as a construction manager, and just always have had a focus in and around technology, just trying to make life better with everything we do in operations.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. And I'll just let you know, we do have some questions I'm going to go through, but it's really important to get your questions answered. So start thinking now. We're going to run the microphones later in the session to see what questions you have from the state DOT perspectives. All right, so Luis, we'll start right here at this end. What does an effective digital handoff look like between a designer and a contractor in your ideal world?
So between a designer and contractor, that's an hard question. So as I mentioned, I come from a perspective where we mainly work with the designers. We subcontract our own designers. So I'm going to come to that perspective because I think my other panel members can respond to that question from a different perspective. We struggle with it, not internally. We struggle with it internally because costs margins are razor thin. So when we start talking with other stakeholders on our company about increasing requirements or adding things to models, a red light turns on. So it's very hard to manage the expectations of stakeholders, because if you talk about increasing scope of something, the first thought that comes to people's minds is increased cost. Well, my department and other departments in my company, what we try to make them see is that that's not always the case. It's not about a model or an efficient way of doing it. It's not about costing more or increasing the hours that you got to dedicate to it. It's about thinking in a different way and changing processes to do it in a more efficient way that serves the purpose that we want to achieve. Just because we're changing from drawings to models doesn't mean that the cost needs to increase. It just means that we need to tackle the problem in a different way. And we also have to take into account that not only are we doing things differently, but there's a lot of value that we can also extract from this change of processes. There's a lot of things that we do the old way that if we do in the new way, will eventually give us value later on the project life cycle. So how can we make this efficient? First, there needs to be very clear requirements from both sides and a very clear understanding from the both sides on what we expect to receive and what the designers are trying to create. And sometimes that's hard to get. And then is try as much, in my case, it's easier because since we do design and construction can give input on a design process. So we can give inputs in order to create this model more in a way that can serve construction. There are still some challenges, but these inputs early on can help make the process more efficient. And eventually, on a perfect world, we'll receive a model from the designers where we barely have to make any changes. And first day we get boots on the ground, we can use them to serve our purposes of building an asset.
All right, I think the term ideal handoff is really what I'm going to focus in on, because for me, ideally, it's not just one handoff. You know, I really love the projects as a contractor where we can be involved early and often, getting to see how things change, because that gives us so much more information to truly understand what's going on. And so if we can't have that, if it is going to be one handoff, the thing that we really need is for the information that's given to us to be digestible. And I think that's really what this is, you know, all about, is how can we get all the information quickly to the contractor so that they can understand it as fast as possible. And I really think that's the ideal handoff, one where we get to our conclusions about how much it's going to cost as fast as we possibly can and as accurately as we possibly can.
I think it's important to understand the type of project we're working on. We do basically two types: hard bid, where it's a low bidder, and alternative delivery, design build. And those two models require a slightly different digital model, digital footprint. On a hard bid, it would be great if we could get the entire DTM, the design file at bid time, so we could produce a faster, more accurate bid. You heard here that margins are razor thin, and putting together cost estimates cost money, no pun intended. So that's on that part. On design build, we work with designers during the design development process, and we get the digital information as it's being produced. It goes to our estimators, it goes to our operations managers, and that process is really beneficial, because by the time we get to construction, everybody understands the project really well, and everybody has the tools in the field to go build the work. So yeah, we need to look at the type of project delivery and tailor, an ideal handoff for that.
No, I don't have much to add other than just real quick. I mean, as far as just an effective handoff, I think ultimately is just understanding what the end user is going to need. And so having that early discussion, and now whether it's in a bid build, low bid environment, or maybe it's alternative procurement, CMGC, what have you. I mean, understanding what the end user is going to need first and foremost. And sometimes, I've always been of the opinion, modeling is the ability to hand that information over and then able to consume it rapidly is impressive. But at the same time, I'm also of the opinion that not everything needs to be modeled. I mean, understanding what's the easiest way for that person to consume the data. And sometimes it's just in a simple 2D PDF. And so don't overcomplicate it. Make it as simple as possible.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. And Connor, I'll come to you on this one. So from your perspective, we're trying to be as efficient as we can. How can the combination of a model as a legal document and providing consistent digital design data and open standards help you as a contractor improve your efficiency and reduce your risk in bidding a construction project?
So I think it would help because it helps us understand what it is we can and cannot rely on. And if more of that coming from the model is something that we know that we can rely on and that we can use, that helps us make better decisions. A lot of times, you know, there are things that we can't rely on, and we have to go out and do a lot of investigation on, you know, a job site to try and figure out what what's really happening there. And that takes time, it takes money. And sometimes we don't have that, and we just have to take our best guess, which a lot of times comes in the form of, okay, we'll have to have it in some sort of contingencies. So I think that having more information that we know we can rely upon is only going to help us, you know, get to our numbers, you know, faster and easier.
I'll add a little bit onto that. When we're looking at a project for the first time and we're putting together, whether it's a proposal or a bid, we have to make assumptions. And the more information we have, the less risk there is in those assumptions, right? In a hard bid, we can't always take on that risk. We try to pass that on to the owner, and that's always a contentious place to be before we even start. So provide us all the information that you have and allow us the opportunity to manage the risk, assess the risk, and at least have an educated estimate of what, or probability estimate of what those risks are, so we can provide you with hopefully a better proposal or a better price.
And what I would add is we've heard this before about a repeatable process as this becomes more mainstream from a contractor's perspective. And I would say as we work day in and day out with a repeatable process, the reality is it reduces the amount of time that we have to learn the information that we're receiving. And if it's something that we've seen before, the file formats are the same, they're typical of what we've seen in the past, we can then just move to the next step of estimating the work. And like was mentioned, you know, the ability to identify the risk quickly and then price it accordingly.
Do you have anything you want to add?
I'd like to add on the consistency. So I've worked in other projects where the owner has promised that he's going to deliver a model for the beginning of the project. And for us contractors, that is not necessarily a good thing all the time, because you need consistency on these kind of models and something that defines it. Is this model going to have properties? What kind of properties is it going to have? How is it, the model breakdown structure going to be? And having something that tells us what to expect when we're going to get a deliverable that is a model also enables us to predict and plan how the team we're going to have on the field and how we're going to use in the model better. My company has beam targets and beam uses that we want to use on a project. We want to measure, we want to do clash detection. And if we know what kind of model we're going to receive and how it's going to be, we can tailor our teams in order to achieve these uses with the model that we're going to receive. If the bid documents only say they're going to provide a model and we don't know what it is, and there's no consistency because every time we receive one, it's different. It's very hard for us to plan and build a team that it's going to work on the kind of model we're going to receive for the workflows we use on the construction site.
And that's a great lead into the next question. And Armando, I'm going to throw this one out to you to start with. What are the biggest challenges that you faced with BIM data interoperability between different design and construction software platforms?
In my experience, compatibility between the myriad of softwares that are out there, both on the design side, on the owner side, and then the operational models that we use, Trimble, Topcon, and so on. We appreciate as much information as we can get, but it does take some time and effort and some skill to be able to make that information compatible. So more compatibility between platforms, or maybe just one platform. I've heard a little bit today about open BIM, and a portal like that, I think would solve some of those problems. So in our experience in kind of integrating, I think compatibility has been the biggest challenge.
Looks like I'm up next. So the question was about interoperability and where we've had troubles with that. And the truth is it's all over, to the point that for the most part, when we get on a project, we try as much as possible to stay within one software stack, just because it makes our lives easier. We don't always get that option. And, I'll point to one that has caused us lots and lots of headaches, which, we had trouble going from the design software to some of the construction type software. In particular, for us, a big issue was bringing Bentley stuff into Trimble Business Center. We do a lot of our estimating and analysis of what's going on in Trimble Business Center. And when you do that, when you bring the files over, it will do weird things to them and distort them. Really good example is really simple one, but if you bring a pipe network over for your drainage, and all of the structures, instead of stopping the pipes at the structure like it did in the original model, it extends them to touch inside of the structure. And that just kind of throws off all the calculations. And I can't tell you the amount of trouble our estimators go to try and figure out how to stop that from happening. But those kinds of issues are pretty regular. And even when we have these companies talk to each other and they fix them, they will eventually make some sort of an update or make some sort of a change, and then they break again. And I think that's one of the promises I think of IFC, is that hopefully that's not something that has to happen anymore, that it should go between these systems a little bit easier, because it's going to change a whole lot less than these entire software companies change. And that's the hope anyways.
Please.
Those are great points. I don't have much to add to that. I just want to add on top that the next problem will probably be a people problem, because as he just said, we all try to pass information from one software to another, and the experience is always awful. So it's very hard nowadays to talk with someone on the project and say, oh, we did this on this software, now you got to put it on this one. He's going to say immediately, no, let's keep to the same software stack to keep it simple. So even though a solution might be down the road where interoperability will exist, we'll still have the problem of convincing these people that are used to no interoperability at all. I'm a Bentley guy forever. I'm an Autodesk guy forever. We'll have to convince these people that there's now is interoperability, and it's possible to change data between softwares. So it's not right now, but in the future, we'll also have that problem.
Okay, I guess I'll add something there. So sorry, I threw a curveball to Connor and kicked it his way. But, Connor and I both had a chance to work on the BlackRock project that was referenced earlier today. And when the project started way back when, we were commenting that it was about 9 years ago, maybe even more for some of the DOT folks. But because it was CMGC, we had the opportunity to take the design files and try it out in different software platforms. And it was very basic at that time, and we struggled with keeping data. It was lost as we tried to transfer. And so you were pretty much stuck in whatever software platform you started in to where you ended, from a viewer standpoint, to use in the field or in the office. But things have moved a long ways, and IFC is very promising. And it's nice in the fact that then we can take files, and regardless of whichever software platform we want to use, we can bring that information in and use it, digest it, and really make the best decisions from it.
Thank you. You know, as an owner, I'm going to change gears here just a little bit. And for me, dispute avoidance is important. And Scott, earlier you said that not everything needs to be modeled. Sometimes a PDF, a two-dimensional PDF is fine. What legal or contractual challenges do you anticipate if the digital design data replaces those traditional PDFs, plan sheets? And then how, as an industry, can we address those?
Great question. So, I mean, first off, there are challenges with it, but at the same time, there's benefits from going that way. Last week in Utah, we had, there was the transportation conference, and our survey manager presented with another group about the benefits of digital delivery, and in particular with models, a legal deliverable or document. And the fact that if a plan set, when he's creating models, if the plan set is the legal document, he can only use the digital files as for information only. And he's still building, in essence, off of the plan set, which takes time. When the model is a legal document, he can take that information directly in, and he doesn't have to worry about referencing the plan set, or, well, likely there wouldn't be a plan set in that instance. And so there's real benefits. I mean, he's able to expedite his workflow tremendously. I mean, something that would take normally 2 weeks or more can be downsized to a day or two, and he can feel confident in that ability. I would say the challenge with models, the legal document, is just making sure that everything is very transparent. And from a contractor's perspective, as was mentioned with Armando and others, everything is evaluated in risk. And if contractors are concerned about risk and they're not sure what's in the documents and what they need to be responsible for, that's risk. And they assign a dollar amount to it. And so as long as the goal is to be very transparent, and I would also say from the contractor's end of things, there has to be a level of trust between the contractor and the owner, and vice versa. And just know, the contractor just needs to know that they're not going to get hung out to dry if this is a new process for everybody, but they're not going to get hung out to dry if something is missed or whatever. I mean, yes, there's the legal side of everything, but there has to be a mutual understanding that we're working through this process together.
Armando?
We dealt with, we'll give you a real life example. We had a design build project, and as the designer who's working for us was developing the design files, they can't go straight to plan sheets right away. So they've got this big design file, and we kept asking for information. You know, give us your model, give us what you have, and they had a tough time handing over a model because of what they perceived as you know, a legal liability. You know, it wasn't quite done. So there are challenges there. Now that's on the design build side. We had some workarounds, but it wasn't as clean as it could have been. On the hard bid project, like mentioned here, it would be great if the actual design 3D model and the entire bid model was made a legal document. I'm sure there are ways with technology to lock them in, and, you know, electronic signatures and ledgers and so on. Because yeah, we get it, the version control and modifications to the files or errors in the files can be a problem, but transparency is the key. And if we have that dialogue back and forth, whether it's in a portal or something where contractors can flag things and see things, then I think it's something that can be overcome with the technology that we have.
So the biggest legal issue that I see is probably defined in one word, and that's LOD. Level of development is probably the most confusing concept in all of BIM. And it is the most important piece when it comes to the handoff of one model from one group to another. Because it's very confusing when you look at a model. It's very easy to think that when it looks really complete and nice, that means it's all exactly what it's supposed to be, or that it's all good. What people don't realize is you can make a really good looking model really fast, and there's been zero engineering thought put into it. It may not function at all. And so it's very hard for people to distinguish when you put a model in their hands, whether or not it's something they should build or something that they shouldn't. And that's what LOD is really all about, is helping people understand that when I get this model and I look at this object and it's at this point in the project, this is exactly how buildable that thing is, because this is how much thought that's been put into it. And that gets really confusing all by itself. Now expand that into a really big project. So I had a project I was working on up in San Jose, really big project, lots of different sections. Well, due to the way that, things go, one section of the project progressed faster than the other in design. And while they were all supposed to be at 85% design at one point, there was still one section that was at 60% design. Yet the one that we're supposed to deliver at an 85% design had LOD requirements about all the objects that were supposed to be in there. However, the two sections do touch each other, which means there are elements that rely on each other. And so there was a big question about how are we supposed to deliver these objects in this section at 85% at an LOD 300 when they depend upon things in this section that aren't there yet. And like contractually, all of a sudden, we weren't able to deliver what we were contractually obligated to do. And that is just kind of the weird thing about LOD, is it seems very easy and straightforward when you just sit down and look at the definitions, but when you start working with it and applying it on the job, it gets really confusing very fast. And I can tell you, because I've been in lucky enough to work on a couple of lawsuits, that LOD progression is the very first place I go. When I'm called in and they say, hey, Connor, can you figure out over the life of this project, whether or not somebody could have solved something, or whether or not something was done the way it was supposed to. That's the first place I start, is an LOD model element breakdown, LOD progression spec, because it helps me understand how things were supposed to go. So if there's one thing that I think is going to be very interesting for everyone, is it's going to be LOD.
I just want to add that start talking about model as a legal document is a big jump to what we're used to. All my fellow panel members already mentioned most of the important points, but people are afraid of change. So managing this change of going from something they're very familiar with for 60, 70 years, that were a piece of paper that clearly defines the design intent, which sometimes also has mistakes and doesn't have enough definition or development enough to be built, and changing to a model which they don't understand, grasp, or feel like it's something that they've never seen. The lack of definition exists on both, either is it PDFs or models, but we're more used to the process of using drawings and analyzing them and to check if they're good for construction or not, and all the mistakes that may be involved. So even though it's a tool thing, a lack of definition thing, experience thing, we're gonna have a long way in order to convince people to change to models, because we still have to convince them or at least make them at ease with using models in their day-to-day life of a construction project.
Yeah, I appreciate, I think Scott said, the building the trust and the relationship between the owner and the contractor is imperative. And as we change is hard. And from an owner's perspective, I think it's going to be very important that we rely on our partnering programs, our project level partnering, our programmatic partnering, to navigate these gray areas as we implement a new process and using this model as a legal document. An owner has to be able to sit there and say, I understand what you saw or what you think you saw at the time of bid, and really try to understand where we might go with our two-dimensional plans and call it a change in character or a differing site condition right now. And it'll take both parties to collaborate to avoid legal issues. You know, we were talking a little bit about relationships. We were also talking about changing people, bringing people along through the process. So really, given the competitive nature and environment, how can your companies, and really for that point, the state DOTs, help bring our smaller contractors along with the digital delivery and digital construction? Their buy-in is going to be imperative to be successful, and they may not have those resources, the small, medium-sized companies. So how can we together bring them along in this process?
Well, actually, I've been pleasantly surprised. I've worked with some of our smaller subcontractors, and the ones that have younger management, well, they either got their company from their dad or they just started the company because they were good at it. And since they were taught in college how to use these new digital tools, they're very excited. I had someone when I was working back in Portugal who had, they had a prefab concrete company, and the models they built were amazing. And they didn't care at all about, you just give me something, I'll work it out. And they would publish perfect models at the right time with the right level of definition, with clear design intent or all the fabrication details we need. And it was a very small company. The guy that was there just really knew what he was doing. So I guess it's about training and pulling people over on the boat. And I also want to add that in our case, when we have a subcontractor that is behind and we want to bring him over on the digital side of things, we always provide our licenses and free training for them. So if there's a platform where we collaborate, where we need our subcontractors to also collaborate, we will do it free of charge, provide all the training he needs in order to make the process as a whole more efficient. Of course, there's programs the DOTs have and all that can also bring these people. But this part, I also think it's on the contractor side, because just you have a relationship with a subcontractor or a smaller contractor, you should bring him in order to make things easier for everyone. Just not make it harder to save a few cents. Down the road, you'll save money, and it's something that our hierarchy has already seen, and we do consistently with our smaller subcontractors.
Yeah, I think that the number one way that we help other contractors is that we end up working with them. We don't do projects all by ourselves. You know, we work with people all the time, and the best thing we can do is bring them into our processes and say, this is how we're achieving this, get them used to seeing what it looks like, teach them how to use some of the tools. And I think that's going to go a long way. But I do think that, you know, I mean, construction and being a contractor is one of the most volatile industries out there. And new contractors show up every day and new contractors disappear every day because it's a tough industry. And whether it's, you know, 3D technology or some other technology, the contractors that don't catch on to which tools they should be using in order to be successful, honestly, do tend to disappear. And that's a little bit of the nature of the business. But that being said, most contractors are very resourceful, and they understand how to find new tools and use new tools and apply those to their process. And they've been doing that, and that's what's made them successful. So that gives me hope that everyone, when they see the advantages it can provide, will get on board relatively quick.
Smaller, newer contractors are often a little more nimble and innovative than large contractors like us. But we can't burden them with an additional barrier to entry. And sometimes, you know, the software is expensive or the equipment is expensive. I think a solution, at least on hard bid, would be some sort of portal. Again, I mentioned the open BIM idea where anybody can go in and look at the plans and look at the model, download information, and do the necessary work to put together a good estimate, a good proposal, without having the extra burden and expense of buying multiple software or having to hire somebody to go do that. So I think the DOTs can pull funds or look at other ways to provide that for at least for the real small guys, for the real small contractors. I think that would go a long way to bringing them on board. And once they catch on, we found out it's the smaller contractors out there. They're innovative. They're resourceful. They do in many ways embrace technology a little better than some of the big guys.
Yeah, and I'll reference the BlackRock project again, because the experiences that we had on that were pretty telling in the fact that, so my involvement with the project was around technology adoption. And so one of the parts of that was our subcontractor community and adopting or bringing those subcontractors on board. And one of the parts of this process was identifying who would even need to have exposure to the model or need the model at all. You know, you think of a painting pavement marking subcontractor. They're just going to say, lay it out and I'll paint it, you know, but maybe an electrical or maybe a barrier sub or someone like that could use the model. And so in those instances, this process was, again, 8-9 years ago, so it's pretty new, but I think it's still applicable today, where I would literally go out for those subcontractors that this process was brand new. I would literally go to their office, or they would come to our office, and we would sit down and we had tablets for them, or they would bring their own tablets. And it was literally the steps of installing software, setting up usernames and passwords, loading up the model. And then this is how you use it. You know, here's the tools, here's how you find what you need to know. And it was those steps, because the reality is if you just say, here's the model, give me a price, guess what? Your price is going to be, it's going to be pretty high if they even bid it. Because a lot of times there's enough work out there that they don't even need to worry about dealing with a model. So we have to make this, we have to bring them on board. And it's important for us as the general contractor to have good subcontractors, because like was mentioned, we can't build these jobs without them.
All right, I'm going to have one more formatted question here. And since Scott threw the curveball at Connor, I'll throw the curveball at you, Scott. Start with you. Just we'll do one more formatted question, then I'm going to take the show on the road here for questions from the audience. But what's your organization's long-term vision for BIM and digital delivery, and how do you really define success?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, of course, every organization is different. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of this revolves around change management. And often it's said, well, a new, technology, give it to the young person. And I dispute that. And I guess I push back against that, because oftentimes I found that we have been most successful with the folks that have a good attitude, not necessarily age, young, older, whatever. Yeah, the younger generation may have grown up with tablets and phones and may be more adept, but I've met plenty of 20-year-olds that really don't have a whole lot of interest in technology besides using their phone to look at Instagram or ESPN, So it really boils down to having a good attitude and people's willingness to change. And on top of that, to make a program successful, there has to be training and support, because again, construction is one of the oldest industries out there. And you have a new process. And as you introduce a new process, there has to be the support there, the training there, that when those folks get to a hard part or a tough spot in the road, that if the training and support isn't there to use this new method, they're just going to revert back to what they know, because we're all short on time anyway. And we found that for adoption of technology, that's been the critical point in this whole process, is just training and support.
Armando?
Our approach really starts with the three core things that we do to run our business. We estimate the work, we plan the work, and we build the work. And we touched a little bit about how we use a model to estimate the work. We've got 2 full-time staff that's what they do. They take all of the plans and specifications and whatever format it is, and they build a model to estimate the work. Planning has been a little bit more of a challenge, but that is the next step for us. How can we bring in that model to help us plan the work in the field? Ironically enough, in building the work, our company has always been very progressive in adopting technology. With the largest concrete paver on the West Coast, and we continually try new technology because it makes us more competitive. So really, when it comes down to it, those 3 activities, estimating, planning, and building the work, if we can find ways to be more competitive by leveraging technology, that is really ultimately what we try to do.
All right, you said long-term plan, right? So this
Long-term
is,
plan and success. What's your measure of success?
so this is probably where I go off the rails. Our long-term plan for success is to be using our models as an archive of digital work put in place. Because 3D models are the only type of information that represents that. And right now, every one of us, whether we know it or not, are in a race for having better data sets. And those of us who get the best data sets are the ones who are going to have the most success, because the tools that are coming out in order to analyze that data are so powerful. But they don't work if you don't have good data. And we have lots of good data at Kiewit, no doubt about it. You know, we have so much estimating and scheduling and productivity and cost data. We've got all of that data. But what's really interesting, and I've seen this at Kiewit, and I saw this one's at Procore, because Procore had even more data, had all kinds of contractors' data. And both were trying to do the same thing, which was like, okay, how do we take all that data and use it to predict stuff? Like, what's this project going to cost? With the least amount of information, can we take all this old data and predict what the next one's going to cost? And the answer was no. Nobody could do it. And there was a big missing piece to all of that data, which is none of it resolved into what are the actual things that you build. Because all the things that I just talked about is data that's stored doesn't represent that. It represents productivity, it represents schedule. But how many widgets did I build? It doesn't know. We only have one thing that puts that last piece in, that connects all of those things together to start making that type of data look at the future. And those are 3D models. But we have to clean those 3D models up. We have to archive them in a certain way, and then we can connect them to all that other data. And then we can start to analyze that to try and become better and faster at what we do. So what's the long-term goal? It is that. It is to take all of these models and make those the centralized data set that connects to the rest of our data, so that we can start to make better predictions about the work we're going to do in the future. And what's the measure of success look like? When we're actually able to start doing that analysis. And I'll tell you, it's not as far off as you think it might be.
So our long-term success, the word is also always the same. It's money. Wow. So we want to reduce rework to save money. We want tangible and measurable ROI on using models. But the main pillar of this, so my company works a lot with subcontractors. So we're more managers and project control guys than anything else. So if you want to control a project, you need good measurements, and if possible, independent of the project. You can only achieve that with some tools and a good data model. That's what we want to achieve. We want to have a data model that that is a digital twin of the construction site, and that we can extract all the measurements automatically from it in order to give insights to our project controls, in order to better track the performance of our projects. That's our long-term goal and the main objective. Eventually, all the other BIM uses will fall into place, but this is the main one.
Well, I didn't really appreciate, the gravity of this when I got asked. Well, I guess I wasn't originally asked to do this, but by default I'm here. But I have the privilege of closing out the conference, so that's not trivial. So thank you, organizers. Although I think maybe Will and Tricia will have some real final words, but let's see. So I'm here to talk about the, there we go. The Federal Highway Digital Delivery Stakeholder Group, or since we need acronyms, the DDSG. My name is Roger Grant. I'm Senior Building Technology Consultant with the National Institute of Building Sciences, and I also happen to be the secretary of this group. National Institute of Building Sciences, acronym NIBS, is a nonprofit created by the US Congress to help the government bring together the private sector to improve the built environment through the application of building sciences, through bringing people together, and through trying to improve performance, safety, security, all those kinds of things. So we've really done a lot over the years to convene groups to try to advance practice. So we're in a great position to do this. But this is Federal Highways Group. NIBS, we won the support contract to support this group through a broad area announcement grant that we received. It is a 5-year contract, so the intent is for this to get going and live on. Federal Highway would like to be here today, but if you haven't heard, there's a little thing going on in Washington. I think people are starting to feel it other places too, so they're not able to travel or participate. But we've been able to work closely with them. Matthew Corrigan is the project manager for this project, and Catherine Petros has been very involved in it. I know many of you know her through working in the pooled funds. James Gray, who's involved in the ADCMS grants very heavily, has been providing guidance to it, and Brian Colley. So the Federal Highway is very involved in this. I know they'd love to be here, and they are disappointed to not be able to be here, but we're happy to be able to advance the Federal Highway Digital Delivery Stakeholder Group and move it forward. We did, have some of our own experiences we put into this. We talked with the pooled funds. We got input from the ADCMS grant participants and from others. So this is just getting started, but we've been able to get input and work together on this to bring it along to where it is. And I want to point out that, we're building on top of efforts by a lot of others. I think for one thing, this effort has been in the works for a while, moving it along and getting it started. And it really builds off of, I think, for the last 3 or 4 years, this meetings at the TRB that have brought people together, and the pooled funds have been bringing people together. So, this is intended to pick up and build on efforts that are already started by a lot of people. And we acknowledge that, certainly. So I wanted to just mention those things. So here's the vision of the group to advance digital delivery of transportation projects here in the United States by bringing government and private sector stakeholders together. So that's critical, government, private together, collaborate on shared practices, procedures, and approaches. So collaborate, that's really important. Value, provide high value for the public. That's important too. We're not doing this. I mean, I think we all enjoy hanging out and coming to these events, but at the end of the day, we're trying to, I liked the way Luis said it, even in the government, it's about the money. We have to make things work and have them make sense. And that comes down to how do we provide value? And it's not just money, of course, it's quality, it's longevity, it's fit for purpose. So it's a lot of things. And the goal also is to help follow and support the Federal Highways BIM for Infrastructure Strategic Roadmap. So this is a really important work done by the Federal Highway Administration to provide guidance to where we are trying to go with delivering technology, digital delivery. Anybody aware of the Federal Highway Roadmap? Raise your hand. Oh, good, good. Who has read the 60-page document? All right. So some good students. There's no test coming, no test, but I'm glad to see that actually, because I mean, I had been a little bit involved in it, in a couple parts of it, but had lost track of it. And we had a webinar a couple weeks ago. If anybody wants to see a webinar on it on NIBS website, you can find it. We did a webinar, myself and Terry Klein, on kind of summarizing what's in it. And looking back at where it is, it's pretty amazing the things that it provides, like definitions of what is digital delivery, where are you, how can you move forward along a organized pathway. It sets out a vision of where we want to get to in 10 years. It talks about the steps needed to get there. And interestingly enough, I mean, we're probably 4 years into it, maybe. And depending on where you draw the starting line, it came out in 21. But, you know, we're really in the pilot project mode right now, starting to move level 1, level 0, level 1, starting to move towards level 2. So it's going to be interesting to see how we can use that document, I think, with this group to help advance the idea of digital delivery. Just to give some background on the group, it's going to be all here in one slide. The purpose of it is really to coordinate and integrate, you know, across different sectors and efforts that are going on in transportation. So that makes sense. We need that to bridge gaps among what agency and industry advances are going on, and to really move towards digital transformation by finding out where there are gaps or overlaps, which are equally important because we don't want to, you know, perpetuate inefficiencies. So finding those is critical. Have a national vision. So I think we are, you know, it's fabulous the way we're working at the state level to get things done. And a lot of that is driven by Federal Highway, but also looking at things at the national level is important to see where we can share and leverage that as a national vision. And then facilitate information exchange. We have there is a lot going on, but if you don't know about it, you can't find it, you can't benefit from it. So trying to get things out there and make things transparent and share them is really important. I need to point out what it's not. It's not an official advisory group that is telling the Federal Highway Administration or the Department of Transportation or the US government what to do. It can make recommendations, but they're not binding on the government to do anything. And so that's a formal point that we need to make, but it still has a lot of potential to help identify what's missing, what could be done, because I think, you know, we're all seeing the effects of it, but when you step back and consider how much the federal government has contributed towards advancing practice, it's pretty impressive, really. And I don't know, it's been a while since I've seen it totaled up, $20-some million of investment in just digital technology kinds of things. More than that now, I'm sure, with the ADCMS grants. I'll just say, we started working on how to develop a standard for bridges and we delivered something in 2015 to Federal Highway. I went to the IHEAP conference for the first time with Brian Cozy to talk about it. There were 5 people that came to hear the talk, and I don't think it had anything to do with me, but I did feel, Brian felt terrible about it, but it was, I think it's testament to how much things have come along. It really, you know, it was a conference talking about how to use software to do things, and now we've transformed it talking about how to use data and process. So that's pretty important and impressive accomplishments I think we've made here. We should acknowledge that and be, you know, pleased. The objectives are to, and I think these, you know, are pretty self-explanatory, but we're saying, if it goes without saying, it can go without doing, somebody said, but so to foster collaboration is really important, to get people working together. And it's not just saying it, but it's also doing it. So that's why we do need groups like this. I know there was a comment which I certainly can warm up to, which said, you know, we don't need to have more groups to work on things. We just need to do things. And I like to put my head down and do things, but it's also important to look up and look around and get everyone together. That's especially at the scale we're trying to make progress here. We need to share knowledge and foster that. That's important. And I think, you know, I was told once that what open standards do is foster innovation, because you then open up to many more people to think about how can we solve the real problems that are embedded in practice and not create their own sort of way of doing that, but have to really think how to be open. So we can really foster innovation with this by focusing on the things that we are focusing on and continuing to build on them. And that's a real important outcome. Everyone has needs. We need to speak those needs out so that they can be addressed. And then we need to have a forum to do that within. And we think the DDSG provides a place for that. I think we're here because we believe in standardization and open standards and what they can do for us. And we need to keep that drumbeat going. It's really important. I'm so impressed, having come more from working in the vertical world. I mean, we've talked standards, we started IFC up and did all the things around that for vertical buildings. But I think it takes a commitment to keep it going, and it's exciting to be here and see the commitment in the transportation sector to continuing that. We want to influence practice. Great to hear contractors talking about what they're doing. We need to keep that dialogue going, and not just with contractors, but with the owners who are requiring things from them, the consultants that are doing work, the suppliers and providers. And, you know, probably there was one question about it. We haven't really considered it here, but the public, I mean, you know, we have to sell the receivers of the things that we make on the need to make them in an efficient and effective way also. So I think we need to keep that in mind as well. And yes, we need the money to be able to do these things. And we do have to think about how to optimize investments, keep support for the you know, it's really amazing what the IIJ did, and we need to think about how to collectively advance that in the next round of funding, and how to get more funds for leveraging these programs. And the roadmap that Federal Highway created was somewhat founded on some work that they did through a global study that showed that in other countries, returns of somewhere from 5 to 20% were being made through applications of better processes, digital technology. And so that was a part of the incentive for this. I think it was the appeal that we heard about the ADCMS grants and needing to quantify those and show ROI. That's so important. So hopefully this group can help with that. The idea is to establish information exchange and delivery efforts across the asset life cycle are important. So this is kind of just giving some flesh to the objectives. What are we trying to do? We want to share lessons learned and best practices. I think that's obvious, but having a way to get it done is not always so obvious. How do you really make that happen? Of course, standards and frameworks, and it's nice. We're doing a lot of work with IFC and the family of standards around that, but there really are other standards that we need to be completely successful in the process side of things, and in working with, as we move on from really, we are talking a lot now about how do we take design and construction, hand it off to asset management. We all know we want digital twins. There's a whole world around the sensors and the ways that you collect live data that we haven't really considered that much, that needs to be part of the conversation. So I think we can foster things like that to happen. And then, just continuing the collaboration and innovation. So I think that's been, I've said that stuff already. On the logistics of the group, the membership is drawn from across the industry. And the idea was Federal Highway, of course, is involved in it. The State Department's transportation are intended to be involved, AASHTO, industry partners, standards organizations, academia, although we don't have any academia members, and other kinds of relevant organizations. The idea was to find organizations that could represent constituencies that were important and bring them to the table. So we heard from some of those already: ACEC, ARTBA, AGC, representing designers and contractors. One, I think, open area for us is going to be the software companies, the technology providers. We desperately need them. I think somebody told me a standard isn't a standard if it isn't implemented in software. If you don't have a way to use it, it really isn't going to do much for you. So that's critical, but there isn't a group that represents the technology providers as a whole, like AGC represents contractors. So I think we're going to work on that. And there's the membership, which I'll put up here in a minute, of the DDSG. But the idea is the membership is a representative sample of the cross section that Federal Highway would like to see engaged in this group. So it's going to be open to everyone. Every meeting will be open. They'll be virtual meetings as well as in-person meetings, but they'll all be hybrid so that anyone can participate that's interested to participate in the group. So everyone's encouraged to join meetings, provide input. All the products of meetings will be shared. We're in the process of making that available from the first meeting now, and the idea is to have 2 in-person / hybrid meetings and 1 or 2 virtual meetings every year to bring people together. And then what happens in between those meetings will continue to evolve, I think. Are there going to be studies needed to be done, groups formed to address certain topics? All this is really just coming together now, but this is the general idea of the stakeholder group. And then here are the members of the group, the initial members of the group. I think the idea is that this list could expand, it could change, but Federal Highway wanted to really invite people to be members who could represent different levels within departments of transportation, different disciplines within departments of transportation, different regions across the country of Department of Transportation members, and also different levels within the organizations. So there would be a cross section in this group. And this member group is really meant to be like the representatives of the rest of the DOTs. So, it's just a way to make sure there's a core group that can come together. And also, unfortunately, there's limited ability to have to fund people's travel, so we need to keep the group at a manageable size, and also for just having discussions and everything. So let's see, and I hope they're not mad at me, but I'm going to ask the members who are here to raise their hand, because then anyone that wants to talk to them about it can do it. So Rick Bryce, Washington, Katie Brown from Oklahoma, Will Holmes from Kentucky, Alan Melly from Pennsylvania, Jacob Tambunga from Texas, Trish Stefanski from Minnesota, I think are all here. That's great to have so many members here. The ones who are pending are just waiting to give us a final official name. So this is the group we've put together as for the start of the digital delivery stakeholder group. As I mentioned, also representing the industry organizations and standards bodies. AASHTO is included as a standards body, as is Building Smart, and my organization, NIBS, through our support, is included in it as a standards organization. And also we wanted to get the critical AASHTO committees. So some people are double duty on here. Trisha's the JSTAN as well as representing her state, and Jennifer is JTCES and representing Tennessee. So it's really exciting to see some of you, get to meet a few of you for the first time, I think, or maybe not. I think I've met everybody before, but and so this is the group and how membership was formed. We've already had some suggestions that there might be some people missing from this list. The OGC, for example, that sets standards for GIS. I think they're a critical group. So there are things like that. We want to hear, what else do we need to do with this group that's going to come out of us getting going. So let's see. Here's what we've done to date. We were initiated in May after working through the contracting. We have completed a charter and invited members by September. We had the inaugural in-person virtual meeting at IHEAP in October, and we are just getting the output from that all together. We have all the presentations, we have notes and a video and everything. We'll be posting all those. We're creating a website where things are going to be available, our webpage on NIBS website. We're also setting up a Teams channel, SharePoint, to be able to share documents through, and that'll be ready this month. And then we're planning for the next meeting. We'll be having a virtual meeting in the end of January or the very beginning of February. We're sending out a poll to members, and then we'll invite everyone that we invited for the last meeting that we can find that are beyond the membership, but all the interested individuals and organizations we'd like to have. That's how we're reaching out to the software companies. So software company people, please come and join our meetings. We desperately need and want you there, as well as any others. And then we'll be having the in-person meeting, the next in-person meeting. We're planning to have it at AASHTO GIST in March, early March, that is. We think we'll be having it on at the end of the conference on the afternoon of the last Thursday, when the conference ends, in the morning of Friday. And then we'll be continuing regular meetings after that. And finally, the findings from the first meeting, which are pretty not unexpected. I guess that's a double entendre, but were expected, because they should be. We've been doing this stuff. So we really find out that workforce readiness and change management are really important. I think the roadmap lays it out. A lot of people talk about this. People, process, technology, and data are the 4 components of digital delivery and success at it. And bringing people along is a critical thing. Terry Klein told me about a survey at the last Bentley user conference in Denver, and I think people said 64% of the challenges with getting people trained up and familiar with using tools and things. So Standards alignment and interoperability are critical. We know that. That's why we're here. Leadership commitment is a key success factor. So we've had conversations about that. We need to focus on it. Peer learning and shared examples are highly valued. So what the pooled funds and the grant, the ADCMS projects are doing and how we can share those things are really important. And just the exchange that goes on by being together. And of course, wanting to do things across the life cycle. Overall, you know, progress towards digital delivery is moving. We're definitely making progress. And it certainly at this point is, it's not evenly distributed. It's higher in some places, lower in others, but we're starting to bring things along to through these early pilot stages, and we need to just continue coordinating, training, and sharing to build on that for our community. So that is it. That's a summary of the digital delivery stakeholder group. I know many of you have heard about it, but that's the most I've talked about it, I think. My email is on there if you can read it. And so is Matthew Corrigan's. Feel free to reach out to Matthew. He very much will respond. He's very much engaged in all this. And I've been here representing them because of because they can't be here, but they are engaged and want to hear from and talk to people. So don't hesitate. Reach out to me, reach out to Matthew or any of the members we identify there. So thank you for the opportunity to share this, and look forward to continuing going with it.